IRF webinar session as part of our new normal, engaging with important conversations and topics related to democracy, related to important conditions in the world, some of the main concerns that we've addressed since the past several weeks during the situation of the pandemic. As part of what we are in the world facing now, we have covered several important discussions and topics since the start of our IRF webinar sessions since mid-March. We started with an important discussion on the spread of COVID-19 and how does it affect situation of democracy in various parts of the world. We have also touched about important topics related to the rule of law, on freedom of religion, and various impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to the situation of the world globally, with usually an extra particular focus towards Malaysians. We had one discussion before on the effect on the economy and also its effect on the new order of life. We've regularly invited various distinguished scholars and speakers, experts on important topics, and that is the same thing as well that we are going to have today. So first of all, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Stefan Presner. Are you there, Mr. Stefan?
Yes, I'm very much here. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be part of this important conversation. And as usual, I would like to welcome all our attendees and participants either on Zoom webinar, or if you are listening or if you are viewing this conversation from Facebook Live or from other platforms. So going straight to our main topic today. Definitely it is still regarding the situation related to the COVID-19, even though I'm sure at least in Malaysia we have already moved, we could say perhaps we have already moved outside of the peak of the threat, we would say, perhaps, which happened in April, more or less, in which most of us were in a movement control, a strict movement control restriction. In some other countries, we're having more serious lockdowns. The impacts of COVID-19 in terms of people's life in general, several deaths, various deaths have occurred as well. And moving forward, we know that the situation of the world is not longer going to be the same as before, as being discussed by various panels and being featured in various events and programs. But one important topic related to the COVID-19 is how do we envision, or how do we try to understand the situation of development from a more global perspective. So when it comes to discussing the topic of global development, it is one of the main key highlight topic is definitely on the Sustainable Development Goals, which is mainly driven by the United Nations as the main agency driving the global development goals in various parts of the world. We could say that some extra focus we can put in is on the impact of the COVID-19 towards the more developing countries, the developing countries part of the world. But it's not only that, we also realize that the effect of COVID-19 is also massive when it comes to the more developed countries part of the world, in the United States, in Europe in particular, and of course the epicenter of the pandemic itself tends to change. It started from China, later it moves to Europe, to America, and now it's moving towards the South America part of the world. But still, it is important to note that when it comes to the plan and the goals and visions for global development, a lot have been achieved for the past years or even decades. If we just go through how when I would say the United Nations mainly driven the global development goals since the time of the Millennium Development Goals, with targeting 8 particular targets that must be achieved, which definitely includes critical issues such as poverty, environment, gender equality, education, health, definitely as well. And since 2015, once the Sustainable Development Goal was introduced to be one of the main agenda on global development, the goals that needs to be expanded in the world also increased to 17. It shows how much the idea and visions of global development has also expanded, and also includes the agencies which also are part of the partnering organizations to make sure that the global development aims, and but in particular the sustainable development goals, could reach a wider sense of the globe, and would involve all the main communities and important agencies as well. And we could generally say that since more or less 2015, when the SDG was launched, a lot of important steps have been taken to improve the situation of global development. Even going back earlier, a lot of challenges and problems have already been faced by the global community and the global agencies. And this would definitely include issues related to economic recessions, environmental challenges, political instability, humanitarian conflicts, and definitely on something related more to the public health issues and certain pandemics as well. But a lot of people and scholars and experts have already pointed out that nothing quite as similar as the threat coming from the COVID-19 pandemic have affected the world, the globe. Even if we go back to tens or even almost 100 years, the effect of COVID-19 have been so massive and widespread towards almost all regions and all communities. Thus, that brings into a very interesting and a very important question that we are going to look and to discuss more further with our expert speaker, I would say, on the topic of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, and how does it relate to the situation and perhaps the long-term effect of due to the COVID-19. So to get our conversation going, I would like to invite again, but before that, let me just briefly read through the background and the biography of our guest speaker, Mr. Stefan Preissner. Mr. Stefan Preissner is the United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia. He has extensive experience in international development and management issues, and has been working with the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, since 1996. Mr. Stefan has provided policy advice to governments and overseen the formulation and delivery of a range of complex multidisciplinary development programs in close partnership with government, bilateral, multilateral, and other partners in various countries in the Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe. Before being assigned to Malaysia in May 2017, he led United Nations and UNDP teams and programs in Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, Bosnia, Nepal, and Bhutan. In addition to short-term assignments in some 20 other countries, Mr. Stefan also holds 2 master's degrees in international relations and law. I would like to welcome Mr. Stefan again. Stefan,